In this video, we're going to look at a little technique that you may find useful inside the modeling room using the symmetry X, Y, and Z. So here I have my origin set here, and I've used this little icon up here. So I'll start by using a primitive for this, and I'm going to just use a cube, and I'll just scale it up. It doesn't really affect anything, but you can see that my cube has been subdivided once. So I'm just going to apply that, and I'm going to go over to select. I'll choose my faces, and I'll just increase the opacity of the actual geometry here as well. Now I'll get rid of the grid on here, but I'll leave this axis because it's an important aspect of this tutorial. The first thing is to just remove all of these extra faces on here. And I'm just going to leave this one, as you can see. So these two open edges here and the one underneath come together and share this sort of vertex point, this invisible vertex point as it were, in the center of the axis here. So that's my initial setup. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to choose X, Y, and Z. And I'm going to make sure that my symmetry type is set to XYZ mirror. Now you can't see anything at the moment, nothing's happened. But to make it more visible, I'm going to go over to Mesh, Virtual Mirror, and I'm going to now enable the virtual mirror. Now that gives me this ghosted view of the mirrored versions of this object. So this is a useful technique. For example, if you only want to focus on these three faces, but you still want to have the whole of this object visible. So for example, I'll go and choose the Move tool now, and I'll pick vertice, and you can see now that I'm starting to move all of those points, but I'm only really focusing on three actual faces of my object. So it's a little bit more optimized in the way that it works, but it does come with a few caveats. So let's take a look at those. So first of all, you'll notice my snapping, mirror snapping, is set to quite a high value. If I move this down, let's say over here, and I take this vertex here and move it, you can see it pulls away from the mirror quite easily. If I increase the snapping on here, then it will snap a lot sooner, and it's a little bit more difficult to pull that away from the initial snapping. And if I turn it right the way up, I've got to start pulling quite away before it pulls apart, and you can see it snaps quite a distance away. So this is an important part to just keep in mind, because this does have an effect. And you can see that because I move this away, if I lower that, then it tears the mirror. So if you pull this point right the way over here and then forget about it, and then you'll think, I've lost that point. It is there, it's just you've pulled it right the way over. And to show you what that looks like, if I turn off symmetry, you can see that's where you pulled the point to. It's just that the mirror was giving you a false impression as to where that point was. So have that in mind and make sure that you keep the points relatively close to the axis. And that's why I left this axis visible, because it's an important aspect of this workflow. So let's just turn that off now we've established that, and look at a couple of other tools in here. So I can go over to split rings here, and I'm only splitting these two faces, as you can see with that blue line, but it will split all the instances or all the mirrored objects as well. So if I come in back into my Move tool, now I'm only moving that very corner piece, as you can see there. So let's look at another option on here. So I can go over to my Faces tool here, and let's click on Select and click these here, and then let's extrude those out. So I'm just going to hit my Transform, Commit Extrusion, and I'm just going to eyeball this and just pull that extrusion out and then move it over in that direction. So that's quite easy to do, but let's have a look at another issue that we may find with this. So let's try another one here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use my split edges again, and I will just split those there, and then I will look at select faces, and I'll just select those faces there, and then I'm going to inset those faces. So I'll choose inset here, and let's see what happens if I inset those faces. So that's working there, but can you see where we have this? When it pulls away from that center, then we're going to have this issue here. So let's go back to my transform. Let's hit a extrusion on this one, and then let's shrink this down and let's pull that in, and let's see. We can see here that we have this problem where it's just leaving those outer edges, and this extrusion here, these faces are snapping still to the center. So how do we correct that? Well, let's go back a couple of steps. Let's bring back our axis here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this widget here to the Y value. So this is X, Y, and Z. So I'm going to move only the gizmo, and I'm going to say 0 and 0 to position that on the Y axis here. And at the moment it's got a height. The gizmo is sitting at a height of 25 on here, and you can see that now I'm able to use that extrusion and it's not giving me that error on the end. So it's important to understand where your axis is and to make sure that the gizmo, the rotation point or the scaling point in this case, is aligned with that axis, and then you won't have any issues. So let's just accept that now, and I'm just going to escape that tool, and now I'm going to go to mesh, and I'm going to say apply the symmetry to the current layer, which is polygroup 1. So let's apply that, and don't forget to then turn off virtual mirror, all that inset work and bevels that I've created and extra loops, etc. And I only had to work on this in one part. It gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of the design, and then you can start to manipulate. Now, of course, I can still come in here with the move tool. So let's go back to my move tool here with my symmetry active, and let's pick an edge, and I can still manipulate all those, and I'm still working in a mirror mode, only this is not virtual. This is not a virtual mirror anymore, but it does give me the opportunity to just work this design a little bit more and figure out some different shapes now that I blocked out using that mirror technique. And of course I can come in here with my select tool and select this edge loop around here. Of course, because I've got my mirror still on, it's going to select the others as well, but I'm going to hit the spacebar, I'll bevel, and I can now just bevel all those in one go. Okay, let's look at another shape. Okay, so I've got a different shape here. I've got a quarter here of a cylinder, and I'm using the mirror to create the rest of my cylinder. So I'm only working with these shaded polygons that you can see here, not the transparent ones. I've selected 2 of the polygons, and I've moved the gizmo to the 0, 0, so it's sitting inside on the y-axis as we did before. Now with that selected, I'll commit an extrusion, and then I will scale this one in as well. Let's commit another extrusion. Let's scale that one down. Maybe push it in on one side to make the shape a little bit different. Pull it the other way. So we can see there that we've got the ability to create some shapes here quite easily, and as long as my gizmo is in the center of this, then I'm not going to get any of those errors associated with mirroring. Once you're happy with that, you can apply those changes that you've made and go to mesh, and if that's your base mesh that's already done here, all you're going to do is you're just going to apply the symmetry on there. Now, of course, there are other ways of working on this, but this is just a very basic look at how you can use these within the modeling environment. So let's take a look at one more example. Okay, let's have a quick look at another tool that we can use for this. So I've gone ahead and set the cube up again as we did before. I'm now going to hit the space bar. I'm going to go to Smart Extrude on here, and we've got this little gizmo that we can use on here. So now we can start to extrude these without using the select option. So it's kind of like an all-in-one, and if I right click I can expand and decrease these. The same applies with the mirror, that if I'm pulling these too far apart I'm going to break the symmetry with that, so I do have to be careful with that. Alter your mirror snapping on there to help fix that issue, and then we can keep extruding and using this tool to do that. So let's escape that tool, drop the selection, mesh, apply, virtual. So just starting off with 3 faces, I'm able to quickly create this type of object. It is easy to create the same thing. It really depends on your workflow and how much control you want over this. A lot of people do prefer to just work with the actual geometry rather than virtual mirrors. It is an option for you if you wish to use it. So that's it. I hope you found that little tip useful. See you next time.